how to make a video on your first draft, which is due next Thursday. And I just want to point out a few things to make sure that it's crystal clear exactly what I'm expecting for this first draft. On the syllabus, I've got it listed here. This first draft needs to be fully completed. So you need to write a full essay, 1,250 words. I want a full bibliography. I want it fully cited. And you need to use 5 secondary sources, which I'll talk about in just a bit. What is really important before you start writing this paper is to look at the essay rubric, and I will show a bit of that in just a bit. What we'll do next Thursday is I want you to put up your first draft into the first draft discussion board. And then what we're going to do is do some peer reviewing. So there'll be 2 classmates who will be peer reviewing your essay along with me. And the reason I like to do that is because you end up with a much better grade if you get comments before you turn it in. Now, because it's a fully completed essay, you really need to read the essay directions on the syllabus. So this essay again is about 1,250 words, about 5 pages, and it should be on your chosen theme. So if you are writing about Greek warfare in your blogs and you made a video on Greek warfare for your video, this needs to be your topic. And I'll talk about how to develop that in just a bit. But one thing you have to remember is that you need at least 5 secondary sources. So these are books and journals. I want to make it extremely clear you cannot use websites for this essay. No websites whatsoever. You will also need to use at least 1 primary source. So in this case, it can be a written text or it can be archaeology. Now I'm going to let you use the internet to find the primary source or the archaeology. And just to make it crystal clear, secondary sources are journal articles. For example, journal articles which you find on JSTOR. JSTOR is a database which you do use it online, but it's not a website. So your secondary sources must be books or journal articles, no websites whatsoever, and you must make use of a primary source or a text written in the time period you're studying, or archaeology. You have to have a thesis for this paper. It's really a research paper. I'll talk a little bit about how to create a thesis in just a bit, but once you create it and once you put it into your first draft, it needs to be underlined. So everyone needs to see exactly what your thesis is. And these essays, as I put up here, you're going to be talking about why things happened. So that's really what a history research essay is. It's not just listing a bunch of things of what happened, it's why things happened. So again, I don't want to blow account of what is happening. Okay, if you look further down in the syllabus, there's some requirements here. It should be double-spaced. You need to use Chicago style in-text citation, which you've been using in your blogs, or use footnotes if you're more comfortable with them. It doesn't matter to me which one you end up using. You must also have a bibliography. I've already been talking about Chicago style, but if you need to look at that again, you can just click on the Chicago Manual style website that I've given you. Okay, so that's what I want to say about the rough draft. I'm going to a document here that I've given you in Blackboard, and it's just called How to Write a Thesis Statement. So I just want to spend a few minutes going through this. So your statement consists of 2 parts. So it identifies your topic or your subject matter, and this is really important. It gives a succinct summary of what you have to say about your topic. So first thing you need to do before you create a thesis statement is have a very specific question about what you want to look at. You just can't say, I want to look at Greek warfare in the Peloponnesian War, because what you're going to do is you're just going to write a summary of the war, and that's not a history research paper. That's just a summary. So what you need to do is think of a very specific question. For example, why did the very famous Pericles become a traitor to Athens during the Peloponnesian War? So that's a very specific question about something. And then what you need to do is start doing your research by looking through books and journal articles that talk about Pericles, and that will help you to answer your question. So a few other things about this document. A thesis functions like a case a lawyer has to make. So you are arguing your case. Now what you'll find is that your thesis statement usually isn't very defined at the very beginning of your research, because what you do is you start off with a question, and then as you're doing your research, you're developing the information you're finding on that specific question. So at the end, so if your question is, why did Pericles become a traitor, you turn that question into a statement by using the information that you found. So you'd say, Pericles became a traitor to Athens because of X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z are the reasons that you found in your research. That's your thesis statement. So, and this will come near the end of your introduction. And as I just mentioned this here, you'll need to modify this a little. But in your rough draft, I want to see a clear thesis statement, even though you might modify it just slightly. So this document is really important to look at too, because it gives you characteristics of a weak thesis statement. So raises a topic or question, but doesn't specify an argument. Offers a plot summary, which you don't want, or statements of fact. So you can't make a research paper saying, is Pericles an Athenian? Because everyone knows that he is, so you can't argue against that. Offers an opinion. You can't say, I think this. So I think that Pericles was a traitor because of X. You have to provide evidence. So you have to provide evidence for that. Don't just give your opinion or make guesses. You have to state your reason and back it up with evidence. You don't want something too broad. So you don't want to look at the entire Peloponnesian War, or why did the entire Peloponnesian War start. That's a little bit too big for a short paper like this. So characteristics of a strong thesis statement. Answers a specific question. So again, think of a specific question first. Takes a distinct position. So Pericles was a traitor because of X, Y, and Z. That's a distinct position. It's debatable. So what that means is someone can argue another reason. So if you say Pericles became a traitor because of X, Y, Z, someone could come along and say, no, I think it's because of A, B, and C. So, and that's perfectly fine. That shows that it's a thesis statement that you're arguing based on evidence, and someone can come along and look at the same evidence and argue something else. Okay, if you're having trouble creating a thesis statement, fill out these one of these sentences. Now you won't be saying I in this paper. You shouldn't be saying I and referring to yourself. But in this paper, I argue that Pericles was a traitor because of X, Y, and Z. You could also fill in this blank. While critics argue that Pericles was a traitor because of A, B, and C, I argue that Pericles was a traitor because of X, Y, and Z. Now, the important thing about here is that you've done your research and you know what other scholars have said about this. Down at the bottom, there is a thesis statement checklist, and you should definitely be looking through this. Is it debatable? Do you make a specific claim? Does your thesis offer a roadmap? What that means is when you say Pericles is a traitor because of X, Y, and Z, your reader is expecting you to write about X first, then Y, and then Z. So that offers the roadmap, or really the outline of your entire paper. And then you can look through the rest of this. Another really important one is, can I support my thesis with material available? That means you have to do the research on Pericles. You have to know exactly what he was doing and when, and then make your argument based on that. So that's one of the documents that I give you in the essay writing part of Blackboard. And if you can't find that, that is okay. And you find your, sorry about that delay, you find the essay writing folder in the How Do I and some tips. So how do I write my essay? So if you click in there, you'll find a self-diagnostic. Now you'll have to ignore some of the things like this word count. This was done for another class. If I have time, I'll go in and edit this. So I give you some Chicago style examples. So you can look at this and open up the document, and what you'll see is for a book, when you cite, and this is for footnotes, you will cite with the author's name, the name of the book, and the very specific page number. So let me just close this, get back to Blackboard. Okay, I give you some more styles here. Here's that how to write a thesis statement. And then if you need it, I've also attached the Pocket Handbook to Writing History. This is a fairly long PDF of the Chicago style. So make sure that you look at all of these things before you start to write your essay. And let me just take a look around, make sure I don't have anything else that I want to talk about. No, so that should be it. So again, think of a specific question based on your topic. Start writing your thesis statement once you do your research. Now I will say, if you look at this particular document, Essay Writing Tips, what you'll see is some very useful information, like what exactly are you being asked to look at. So you will be making up a question. It's really, really important to remember that you will not be finding one specific book that's going to answer your research question. So you'll be reading through quite a few. So you need at least 5 secondary sources. You'll probably be looking at least 15 books or journal articles. So you're not going to find the book. So your job is to look through all the different material and look at this. And so later look at the Essay Writing Tips document for how to put your essay together, what the introduction should look like, what the conclusion should look like, and so on. So as usual, if you have any questions, just send me an email.